education around how to make your immune system healthy, that would be mandated, in my opinion. There would be more education around that because I think that empowers people and I think that's part of the solution. Because right now, the only thing that you're hearing is just get vaccinated. And so that still propels fear. Fear suppresses your immune system because cortisol is not good at high levels constantly, but no one knows that.
Welcome to the Anthropology Podcast. I'm your host, Megan Walker. As a former naturopathic doctor and anthropologist, I align the intersection of personal performance, purpose, and innovative thinking in badass women working to change the world as entrepreneurs and go-getters. Anthropology is the study and science of what makes an entrepreneur think, feel, and perform in a path compelled by a vision for helping others, solving problems, while building a life on your own terms. Together, we are exploring the health, mindset, and strategies that distinguish the world's best entrepreneurs. This is the Anthropology Podcast. Welcome to episode 255 of the Anthropology Podcast. We've got a good one today. I decided, as we start into 2022, I wanted to just make sure, I shared at the end of 2021, I want to have more fun. So in the spirit of wanting to have more fun and keep things light, I decided to do an entire podcast dedicated to vaccination. I'm being moderately sarcastic here because sometimes, well, frankly, that is always how I tend to cope with stress. As I get funnier and funnier, and I tried to rein it in for the purposes of this conversation. I tried to keep it under wraps because I know this is actually something really important to people, really important to all of us who are in this together. And the spirit of this conversation with an amazing colleague of mine, Dr. Taylor Bean, is that we wanted to be able to provide you with additional fruit for your platter. And when I say additional fruit for your platter, what I mean is we both recognize that there was a need for us to have greater empathy in how we viewed the decision-making of those around us, how we viewed the decision-making of those who chose to lean into vaccinations with various levels of enthusiasm, those who are hesitant towards vaccinations. This is not a podcast that is pro or against. This is a podcast whose intention is to help inform a greater degree of tolerance and empathy for the spectrum of decisions that individuals are making based on their unique life experiences and the collision of their life experiences with the real-time science and circumstances of the world we are all living in today. And if you are curious about that, if you are interested in understanding and having a greater degree of insight into the types of pieces of information that are informing different decisions, in some cases than your own, then you have come to the right place. This is a long interview because it is a fulsome topic, and I wanted to make sure that we allowed space for the full breadth of conversation. I am super excited to introduce you to my colleague, Dr. Taylor Bean. She is a vaccinating naturopathic doctor from BC. She opens every Instagram post with "as a vaccinating naturopathic doctor," and as a result has a very unique perspective to share. It is my pleasure to introduce you to her now. Dr. Taylor Bean, welcome to the Anthropology Podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Okay, so we've got a big topic we're going to lean into today. We were actually just before we hit start, we were laughing. We're like, how are we going to infuse humor and sarcasm and joking into what is really a heavy conversation, I think, for the world right now, which is exploring this notion of vaccination. And I'm excited to have this conversation with you. And before we jumped on, we both agreed that the outcome of the conversation that we want to deliver is a landscape of ideas and perspectives that maybe you haven't had access to before that can inform your empathy and understanding of the spectrum of decisions that are being made in society right now. So this is not, I want to set the intention even before I do have a question eventually, but I want to set this intention for everybody in the portion of the interview where we're both here, that what we are not here to do is to sway an opinion one way or another. It is, we are going to put ideas on the table. And I would say this to my patients all the time. I'm going to put stuff on the platter in front of you, and you have a choice as to whether or not you pick it up. But if it's never put on the platter in the first place, well, then you don't have the opportunity to have a full spectrum of knowledge and insight. And so that really is the intention of our conversation today. It's going to be fun. It'll probably be triggering, all the things that make for a great podcast episode. Okay, Taylor, now that I've set the stage for us, can you share with my listeners who you are and why you really are uniquely positioned to have this conversation with me today?
So my name is Dr. Taylor Bean. I am a naturopathic doctor located in British Columbia, just in the Shuswap area outside of Salmon Arm. And this has been a long journey, not a journey that I chose originally, but I guess it landed in my lap, and I've really embodied it completely. So my career started working, we were living in Singapore, and there are mandated vaccines there. And then my son was born there. So then having a child, I was, loving to take pediatric patients. Before that, I wasn't so into seeing children, but becoming a mother, you are. And so I just love seeing kiddos. So with that was the discussion of vaccination came. And I had two families who didn't know each other that had come in where they had some really profound questions and queries around vaccination. And I was a new grad at the time. And our training in vaccination in school is going to be the schedule and the infections that you vaccinate against. That's it. Really doesn't need to be any more than that. And so the questions, though, that they posed to me, and they're very elegant questions that I couldn't answer. And I actually felt embarrassed that I didn't know the answer to that. And then it happened again to me. And I was like, okay, they have been to specialists in Singapore. And in Singapore, you can get care with whomever you want quickly. And that had happened. And I'm like, well, you've spoken to XYZ professional, and they couldn't answer. Well, I feel like I can answer this. So that started the journey that propelled me forward to really learn about vaccination. So then we moved back to British Columbia. And here in British Columbia, we can have our scope includes being able to vaccinate children age 5 and over. And so then it just continued from there. And so as a result of embodying that, patients get, caught wind that, I'm vaccinating, but then also I am educating people around me that I want you to ask questions. I want you to send in questions actually before you come in. And so I want to know what you want to know and what you don't know, and let's go from there. And so that has increased. That's probably one of the primary aspects of my practice now is around vaccination. And it's just interesting to hear the stories that families faced around their previous healthcare practitioner on how they were treated when they asked the, X question. And so I, teaching me of what's actually happening out there was recognizing a place that no one was sitting in. And it was simply around allowing patients to ask questions, and how not allowing them to ask questions was actually breeding hesitancy. And I could see it where they're like, well, my healthcare practitioner told me, well, if I don't, the things they would say were either shaming them, gaslighting them. It was quite disrespectful. And so they're like, I can't go back. I can't face my practitioner. I cannot. And so it was like, interesting how you were treated made you actually pause and hesitate to be vaccinated as a result of your experience. So that's just grown. And then from there is, understanding the nuances of vaccination, the shortfalls of vaccination, and how we can improve even vaccine hesitance or efficacy. and what that entails. And so I've just sort of taken it full on and all angles of vaccination. So it started with children. Now we're in the COVID time. So now we're talking about COVID
the era of COVID.
So now it's sort of a new vaccine, a new, this new infection dealing with that we can vaccinate against. And so, now I'm learning more about this and having a conversation with the patients around. And now children are eligible to be vaccinated against COVID as well. So then that's now another new conversation to bring in. But typically and traditionally, it has been around the traditional vaccines for the childhood schedule. So that's sort of my journey in a couple minutes of why I'm here and why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I really want to change the landscape of vaccination. I do, because I see that there are big issues. And when you disregard someone's question, or you skirt around it, or someone's going to look at you like, why are you not answering this for me? You're the professional. You should be able to answer the question, or say you don't know and send me off to where I should be if you don't have enough time today. So that's been the journey, and that continues.
Is vaccination a black and white issue?
No.
That was a rhetorical question.
It is so colorful. It's rainbow. And I think that's breaking down all the aspects of vaccination. Is it's not black and white. It is not. And, even using the terms, when I do lectures for doctors, locally and internationally, I really begin the conversation around this yes and no, black and white, pro, anti. And I really want to change the language, because I even, if you feel comfortable being called pro-vaccine, pro-vax, I'm not actually comfortable hearing the word anti-vax, because I think that, because even pro-vax, then you are labeled as, well, you're not going to, be able to talk about it, or you don't want to talk about it, or you don't want to be, maybe more educated around whichever vaccine. Believe it or not, things in science teaches us new things around vaccination.
What?
Compared to
science evolves? Wait a second.
Yes, science evolves. It's this weird phenomenon. So even from 2 years to 5 years, 10 years ago, things are different. And countries are discovering new things. And so I think it really takes a wise person to be able to be open to these new things versus just sort of stuck in one way or the other. So really then being in the middle is where I like to sit, that pro-choice, whichever way that you want to, think about vaccination, or what your decision becomes. You've made a choice for yourself that's pro for you. That's why you made the choice, be it you do or you don't. Yes, there's only two decisions, either do or you don't, but the labeling is just really stagnates us within this conversation when you label someone, and then you're not capable of learning more or having the grace or the wisdom to understand why certain other decisions are made for somebody or for themselves that don't involve you. And there's a lot that goes on, behind the scenes, even with specialists that either advocate for their patient to or not to. But you're privy to know that information. All you know is the person didn't or the person did. So,
and we're trying to fill in all of the gaps. It is in my experience as a naturopathic doctor that I have seen individuals be victimized in their health because practitioners have labeled them prematurely without understanding the root cause of the illness that is manifested in front of them. Is its origin in trauma? Is it biochemical? I had a patient once with scurvy because their primary care physician had failed to ask them about their diet, which had comprised only of potatoes for over 2.5 years. Whoa. And so I have a particular sensitivity to the lack of intellectual sophistication that goes into these blanket labelings of people, especially as it pertains to their health, because that is my respective bias. And so in the spirit of, can we put something on the platter to change people's way of thinking? And this really is an opportunity to change your thinking. This isn't about our opinions. I think one of the first things that's on the platter here is to really be mindful of your language and your jumping to conclusions when someone expresses a level of hesitancy with respect to a vaccine. And the second piece I will throw in there is that not all vaccines are created equal. It's not like I'm pro-food or anti-food. There's a full spectrum of quality of food. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that a little bit, because I'm hearing a lot of people say, and I'm really interested in the conversations that happen in like the parent groups outside when you're picking your kids up. They're like, well, vaccines have been around for a really long time. And do you want smallpox to come back? And I'm like, again, this is the same lack of intellectual sophistication that I think they wouldn't tolerate in other areas of their life. But can you break that down from your background? When we talk about vaccination, some things are well established and some things aren't. Can you just give us some insight on that background?
Right. So when it comes to how vaccines come to the market, so people have, I think, rapidly started to understand how this is done. Well, you never understood how it was done before. So you have 3 phases: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And then once phase 3 is completed, then that vaccine is licensed for use. And it may then be put onto a schedule. And now we're in phase 4 as a result. And then you're continually maintaining the data as a result of its efficacy and safety once you're still in phase 4. And so it's continuation. And with the importance of that is detecting if there's any issues with vaccination. 2 examples are the DTaP vaccination, so which used to be the whole cell for pertussis, used to be whole cell pertussis. Then they've changed it to the acellular pertussis. That's why you see a little A before the P in the DTaP vaccine, because they altered it, they changed it. And why? Because they were having a lot of adverse reactions. For those that don't know, Bordetella pertussis is a bacteria releases LPS, lipopolysaccharides. That is incredibly inflammatory. So that's what was happening. So then they made it acellular, and we don't have that issue as a result from changing it, but they needed to have the information as a result to know they needed to do that.
How many people had, and let's be clear, DTaP is a vaccine that kids under the age of 5 will be given. How many kids had the non-acellular DTaP vaccine before we were like, oh shoot, there's an issue here?
Right. Many. And so it was up until mid 80s that we received it. So
for years, this was going on.
For years. So then there was the grace to recognize that this was happening, the having the ability to have the bandwidth to realize that this is what was happening, to allow for the conversation to be, the vaccine is causing this, so we need to change the formulation. So they did. And then the rotavirus is another vaccine that was causing an issue, intussusception, which is not something you want in your child. So they pulled it, reevaluated, and yes, put it back on. But these are 2 examples of, well, when we're allowing to have the conversation that there may be an issue, we can pull it and have a conversation. And that's why when I speak with my patients and I'm going to vaccinate them, they get the adverse reaction table that discusses the potential adverse reaction. So they are informed. So they are aware potentially, so that you can let me know, so I can report it and we can have a discussion about that. So it's documented. So I also want to tighten up the whole aspect of vaccination so that you know that when we vaccinate from A to Z, I'm going to cover all bases versus just, here's a little pamphlet, see you later. And so I think that we are doing vaccination a disservice by not being encapsulating all of that and keeping our chart notes tighter, and allowing our patients to have a conversation with us if there is an adverse reaction, to have that intelligence ability to have the conversation. I don't shy away from it. And even anything, if it's a B12 shot, an herb, or a vaccine, you're all are equal. No one gets an out of jail free card. Nobody.
Right.
So who was it and how did you do it? And why did you do it? And so if it wasn't the vaccine, okay, great. Goodbye. I guess it was the herb. Interesting. So that is how I work, because everything gets to be scrutinized equally. And so, yeah.
When people say, and we do say it, in fact, my husband, who is a trained pediatrician, when we're talking about, and in general, with respect to vaccines, and let's just throw it on the table, the COVID vaccine, what I hear a lot of parents saying right now is, I'm just waiting for more information. Mm-hmm. And they say that, and I suspect in many cases, and in fact, even in our own case, when we are sharing that sentiment, we don't necessarily have specifics about what we are waiting for. It is more just we're looking for more. We're looking for more data. We watched this happen with AstraZeneca. It was 1 in 1 million, then 1 in 500,000, then 1 in 100,000, then 55,000, then 1 in 20,000 people is having an issue with significant life-threatening clotting and thrombotic issues. And so, taking this a step deeper and going, what information should we specifically be looking for? Almost in a checklist of satisfying this notion of, well, I'm just kind of waiting for a little bit more. I suspect there are probably a few broader, granular bullet points we can throw in there. Look for this kind of data. It's really important to evaluate safety. What would you pick?
Well, I like to, number one, go to the vaccine insert first. Vaccine insert is going to be published and within the vaccine package once phase 3 is completed. So I like to read all inserts. I have all of them in my office. They're actually all on my website that you can download. We currently have with COVID vaccine a monograph. We don't have an insert yet. So they have information from phase 2, phase 1, and information there. There is a PDF that's out that people can read. That was from November 19th, 2021, about the information on COVID vaccine for children. So this is where the National Advisory Committee on Immunization puts out their advisory statement, looking at the information on COVID vaccine for children from phase 1, 2, and continuation right now, currently in phase 3. And so, because an insert is going to go through, so I guess the points that would check off the chance and the risk of that infection harming the child. So you want to look at that. You're like, what the risk of contracting the infection, and what are the numbers in terms of when this age group contracts that infection becomes something that I don't even want to see in my child. So what is that? Is it 1 in 1,000? Is 1 in 100,000? What is it? So that's where they'll talk about that data. Then number 2, of course, they will talk about is the efficacy of the vaccine. Does it even work? And yes, it does. Yes, COVID vaccine does create antibodies in a child, which I think to me is going to be obvious. If you're going to make antibodies in a teenager, the 5 to 11-year-old, they have a rockin' awesome immune system. It's fully developed. They're capable of making antibodies. So then number 3 is going to be safety, is what everyone wants to really know as a parent, because you want to know, is this safe for my child? I'm making a decision for my child. Is it safe for them? So then that's what that will go through. And so then they're looking at, okay, well, what did we see in phase 2 or phase 1? And for me is, how many children were in phase 2? How many children are they basing their information on? Is it 1,000? Is it 10,000? Because numbers matter. So, because then was it by chance or was it actually an issue? So those are some checkoff points that I go by, and then parents want to know ingredients. So what are the ingredients in a vaccine? And your inserts will tell you. There could be some language in there you're not totally understanding what it means, but that's why I'm here, or anyone else that understands vaccination, of what that word means. And we can break that down. Why is it in there? So those are the things really. And so in order to determine in terms of safety and efficacy is time. You need time to tell you. And that amount of time in vaccination typically is going to be a few years to tell you. So that can satisfy knowing, because yes, there are vaccines that have been on the market for decades. And so we can, polio vaccine, it is decades. And so we also are trying to take information from other countries right now and pooling that together. Also, I like to see, well, how many were in, Switzerland or Germany or India. When you take this information, was it 10 children that you're basing this on, and then pooling that all together to make one big number? Or is it 1,000 in that country? Because that matters as well. These are the little things that.
And different genetic profiles.
Demographics. There's a lot of things, because then this is where we get into the shortfalls, which an insert won't tell you. This is my interest around vaccination, is why could a vaccine not work for you? Or why would someone have an adverse reaction when someone else doesn't? So some of these questions that I try to answer, and how could I optimize that then as a result? Because I think with vaccination, medical intervention, which is inflammatory, it is inflammatory to make an antibody, period. With all the vaccinations, it is the process that which of taking the antigen to seroconvert to an antibody. That's what happens. So for some people, some bodies are going to come in more inflamed because their lifestyle choices, or maybe their health moving in. So this is an opportunity for me to be like, well, we actually do need to improve these ailments in you, because we should anyways. And then you're going to have a better efficacy as a result of when you do receive a vaccine, be it's tetanus, be it's MMR, be it's COVID. So you should be doing that anyway. So if you are a person that enjoys, eating a lot of sugar, you don't exercise, you don't sleep well, and so forth, and if you've reached a certain BMI, overweight, that will affect a vaccine's being efficacious for you. And so the whole point of you getting vaccinated, or your child to get vaccinated, is so that they make antibodies, so that when they come in contact with that infection, they can handle the infection better and only show mild symptoms because they have the army or the insurance in them to deal with that antigen much faster than someone who did not. That's the primary reason, not the secondary reason. The primary reason we vaccinate is so that you do better with the infection.
Home insurance.
Home
Literally,
insurance.
it is home insurance.
It is home
and
insurance.
You are the home.
Exactly.
When we talk about that, the natural question is, okay, fair. We've protected ourselves. Level one, that's frankly the priority of the people protecting the healthcare system. It should be everyone's priority right now as we have conversations about health. How do I better protect my home? What about this notion that when I am vaccinated, I am now protecting everybody else? Can we talk about that specifically in the context of the COVID vaccine?
So when you're vaccinated and you create antibodies, so you come in contact with the infection, you've breathed it in. A lot of these, obviously these things that are, floating in the air, be it's measles, be it's pertussis, be it's COVID, you breathe it in. And then what you're wanting and hoping is that you've got enough antibodies to then neutralize that antigen. And so that maybe your symptoms will only be mild, if not nothing. So then you aren't able to spread that infection as if someone had not had a vaccine. Because if you have not had a vaccine, then you breathe that infection in, and then you don't have the army to deal with it. So then it manifests further into something more moderate or severe. That's the whole primary objective and the goal. So as a vaccinated person, because you can deal with the infection faster, then you're not able to spread, or you're not as virulent. The virus isn't as virulent, we're talking about COVID, to be able to spread to someone beside you. So that's the secondary aspect of vaccinating, protecting the people around us. But then we have to go back to the primary aspect, is because if you've been vaccinated, then if someone is coughing on you or sitting beside you, you should have your home insurance as a result. So this is where breaking these boundaries in this narrative of being vaccinated and sitting beside someone, a healthy unvaccinated person or a healthy vaccinated person, it should not matter because you have insurance. So it's okay to sit beside these people on a bus or a train, frankly, because they are, you're not going to be boarding when you're clearly sick. But if you're asymptomatic, you don't know that you have it, be it COVID or something else, then you as a person who's been vaccinated has that insurance. That's why you do it. And so these notions that you can't or shouldn't, or that part is a problem. No, that's not even part of the conversation, quite frankly, of you as a vaccinated person to be not able to sit beside, because going back to some people can't, some people advise not to. And so are we going to really divide our community, our family, as a result of thinking, or you've been told you shouldn't sit beside them? No, you got vaccinated actually to maybe even protect them because they can't. And we give a buffer. And with all vaccination, we give a buffer about 5%. We want to hit 95% herd immunity because we allow for 5% to not be vaccinated, can't be vaccinated, the vulnerable, etc. And so that same thing should be applied to this because we do it with everything else.
Right.
But it doesn't seem like it is. And I don't know, this is how it works because also some people don't make antibodies very well. We don't know whom that is. That's why we allow for the buffer. You're even genetically predispositioned not to be able to make antibodies very well. And that happens all the time when it comes to measles and mumps. People don't make antibodies very well. And that's just, when you check someone's antibodies, they just don't have immunity, but there's reasons why, and the literature talks about it, which is fascinating.
There's different components to our immune systems. Mm-hmm. And so here we're specifically talking about antibodies and vaccines increase antibodies against a specific, and in this case, we're talking about a virus. But there are other members of our immune system army, one of which are T cells. Are T cells generally influenced by vaccines?
So they're going to be secondary influenced due to your innate immune system. So you've got your innate, which is your macrophages. We'll give it a name: macrophages, dendritic cells, which is your army that's on the scene right away. So what they do is they see the antigen, they eat it. These are Pac-Man. They engulf it. And then they're going to travel to your lymphatic system to present it to T and B cells. So that adaptive side. So that's the side that's waiting for the message that something's wrong. And
the second rung.
Yes, exactly.
Portion of the army. Yeah.
So then they are going to recognize, oh, look, there's something inside that macrophage. Ooh, look, it's COVID. Okay, let's kill it, or let's, with our B cells, remember it. And so that's how basically the aspect of it happens for all vaccination is we need a strong innate immune system to speak to our adaptive side to make an antibody. So they all work in harmony, and the communication between the two is using what's called cytokines. So the cytokines are going to communicate between the two. And it's interesting what happens in infancy versus adults and the lack thereof of these particular cytokines, which why we may not have a good seroconversion in infants versus someone who has a fully grown immune system, which is by the age of 2. So these are bits then that we can go down, but basically, yes, you've got innate and then you've got T and B cells.
Yeah. And I share this because in the narrative of discussion and in the narrative of, well, we should all be protecting each other. I think, back to this idea of it starts with how you take care of your home. These T cells are highly influenced by protein quality and diversity of nutrients and high quality nutrients and vitamin status and regularity of exercise and all of these pieces. And conceivably, if we are protecting our own inherent immune systems, we're going to be able to decrease that that viral load. Like there are actions that we can all take as individuals to additionally support our community. And so one of the things I just want to put on the platter here is if you are one of these people who feel really strongly that we should all be helping each other out, that it is a yes and when it comes to this notion of a vaccine, that not only can you go and line up and get your shot, but you can also be taking full responsibility for your own health. And that it really, the bare minimum on the public health side narrative is get your shot. But if you really, I'm trying not to have an opinion, just an idea here. If you really are committed to this notion of we should all be doing all the things all the time, then we need to also address what's happening with respect to the food choices that you are making and the exercise and the weights you're lifting and all the things that are actually going to increase your capacity to neutralize this virus when, and I really believe it's a matter of when, we all come in contact with it.
You bring up such a great point about all the things for protecting your home. And those that are listening, your vaccine will not work very well if you come into this inflamed and sick. Period. And there is evidence, really good evidence, even around the influenza vaccine. You have poor vitamin D status, zinc, even other nutrients. You will not seroconvert very well. You will not make an antibody very well. So all while you've been vaccinated, it almost becomes a moot point at times with some people because they did not hit the threshold to be protected because of their health status going in. So yes, you can damage your immune system. Oh my goodness. You can do so many things to harm it. Your choices affect that immune system, and your insurance policy is out the window when you make these choices. So it is upon yourself. We're in this for the greater good. Then it is upon you and your responsibility to take care of that home of yours if you want your insurance to even work. Or you know what? It's not going to work. It's flooding and fires. And well, you don't have protection to that. Sorry. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you alluded to a few pieces in there too, which is, if your nutrient status is good and if you aren't inflamed in all of these pieces. And I know one of the things you really love to talk about when you're working with your patients is this notion of vaccine optimization. If you're going to make the decision to vaccinate, and I can speak freely about myself. I've done a podcast on this, why I got the jab, and also why it's none of your business, but I talked about it. There were things that I did before I got that vaccine and after I got that vaccine. I was really mindful of what my health status looked like. One of the things I was interested in was like, what would happen to my HRV when in the days leading up to the day I got my vaccine, because I was hearing people say, crash and burn and never recovered and all these pieces. There was no shift in that data, certainly for me. And I was really happy that I had access to knowledge that would enable me to optimize my own home walking into that decision. But this is what you do day in and day out for a much broader spectrum of patients. Can you speak to this, Taylor, like what you're talking about when you say vaccine optimization?
Yes. So vaccine optimization embodies different things. The language, the feeling safe to talk to me, because boy, people come in and I can tell they're nervous, but we have some laughs and then we're good. Then it's about optimizing that immune system. And so typically with children, because it's the bulk of whom I'm supporting, is we go through all their health. We start with their health status and I go through all of that, all the things. And if I see that, we do need to improve, for example, gut health, because believe it or not, there's a lot that goes in there, particularly around the immune system in the gut. So, and that can be a reason. And there's evidence, the lack thereof, or the improvement of certain bacterial species improve your seroconversion. Who'd have thought? So this is where I need to clean that up and fix that before, we move forward so that we have better efficacy. And so we're going to choose the supplements that are going to hit all of these things. So this is going to be the probiotics, maybe spores. Bacillus subtilis has come into the information of helping with seroconversion, so spores. Then D. Vitamin D is an obvious one, to zinc. And with COVID vaccine, I've been introducing some things that are, going to help with that inflammatory response post. Melatonin is an interesting one. So we've been introducing that. And then lifestyle pieces. So, there's a bit more that I'll do depending on the person's needs, but that's why we go through, well, tell me more about yourself, just like I would with anybody, to see if there's something specific that we need to add in as a result, or is there something I need to improve before we move forward? Vitamin C is another one, which is obvious, not a lot, but a specific amount, which there's been data around why you would. So all these things that I'm choosing is because, well, interesting. The literature is saying X, Y, Z of how I can improve this and maybe mitigate some of these, mild, moderate adverse reactions, because yes, vaccination is inflammatory, but you know what? So is being a car accident, or so is getting surgery. So it's sort of the same implications, although
Right.
when you're going to get vaccinated versus in a car accident. But this
Right.
is why people will come out of a car accident in more pain, not feeling well, when they're like, I don't understand what's going on. So you went into the car accident inflamed and not well and unhealthy. So we can plan then with vaccination as a result.
In speaking to individuals, like what I'm trying not to do is just have sweeping generalizations in which we are making our own informed decision.
Mm-hmm.
Are there pockets of the population besides inflamed people, and in some cases people are inflamed and don't know that they are inflamed, where you have some hesitation in jumping into vaccines as a first line of defense right now? Can you speak to that at all?
Well, there are some patients where I have pause with them, and so do their specialists. We're kind of on the same page, where they're not getting concrete answers from their specialists of yay or nay. And so they're coming to me, not necessarily for me to say yay or nay to them either, but you know what, look, how do we make my body better? And so there are some people based on their conditions of pause, and even, reading through Pfizer's pamphlet, their 24-page pamphlet of their advisory committee statement for children, and looking at the conditions even within that were excluded from the trial. So it's like, okay, well then you could obviously use that towards adults. And so those inflammatory conditions that they talked about would be a moment of pause for me to if we can wait, then let's work on this beforehand. And some of those can be either derived from chronic infections, maybe there's a neurological condition, be it even if they're on biologics. So it's one of those areas of all right, let's work with this and improve so that when you do, you have better outcomes. And everyone's on the same page with that. So it doesn't happen often, I would say, but it does happen at times. And then we try to optimize that as a result.
What does informed consent mean?
Good one. So this informed consent means that you have been told the risks with vaccination, the risks without vaccination, the benefits of vaccination, the alternatives to your decision, and what those are. The opportunity to ask questions. What's interesting, to achieve informed consent here in British Columbia, as put by the BC CDC, it's a 7-step process. And one of those is the opportunity to ask questions. So whatever that is. And so then you need to be able to weigh this risk versus benefit ratio, as we call it, to be able to make this informed decision. If there is lack of information, you should know that, which I am open to sharing with people. I don't know that. I have not seen that. I cannot answer that, or that has not been done yet. So I can't answer it. So then people will realize and make their decision. Some people make decisions based on, if there's a lack of evidence, I'm actually okay with that. Or for some people, the lack of evidence, I'm not okay with that. That question has to be answered before I move forward. So that is where informed consent can take a while to achieve. It won't happen in 5 minutes. And me just saying to you, it's safe and effective is not good enough for me. It's not good enough. And so I like to get into the nuances, the nitty gritties. And so I don't say it's safe and effective. We basically ask me a question and I will answer it. And then you would say, okay, well, based on all of what you're saying, I feel it's effective enough, which they most all always are. And I'm comfortable with its safety that has been done thus far within the phase 1, 2, 3 clinical trials. Okay, let's move forward. So my mission with patients is to help them to achieve, come to a point where they have achieved enough information so they will consent to do something. Because frankly, I don't care what people's decisions are. I don't, because I have no emotional attachment to your decision. I can't. We shouldn't. But I care about if you walk out of my door being more informed than you were before you came in, or maybe you're leaving with more questions that you need to do some more reading on to satisfy that your decision of whatever which you're doing. And which is I think the core of what we as naturopathic doctors or any healthcare practitioner can do is be that unbiased person and be transparent and leave the emotion at the door. I don't have emotions towards your decision. Great. You decided to vaccinate. Great. Let's move on. This is your decision, your body, your life. And it doesn't affect me and your decision making because I may never see you again. But I want to know that you would never come back and say to me, "You didn't tell me this." I couldn't. Yeah, that part I would be really tough for me to handle. You didn't tell me this. I did not know this. You should have known this, and then that would be a tough conversation. So I want that to never happen. So I want to answer all questions and achieve a point where I've informed you to the point that to my best ability.
Do you think we'll hit herd immunity with this current virus?
Oh, that is a tough question.
This is an opinion piece now.
Well, I mean, when we've got Health Canada telling us that the efficacy of the vaccines are waning after 6 months, is one thing. And the other thing is as we are faced with new variants, is the vaccine going to be effective against these variants? ? Time will tell. Time will tell. We're in that moment of understanding if it will or will not. This is why we have daily cases. This is why we're collecting data every day to see, is the trend going up or is the trend going down? And what variant is it? Is it the vaccinated or the unvaccinated? Is it the elderly or is it children? So all of this information is really important to gather so that then we know when we're done phase 3, which we're in right now, we can collectively put all that information together on an insert. So I try to keep up with it all, but just sort of sitting with it and sometimes sitting back and waiting and watching to see, okay, is what is happening? Is it working? Is it not working? And then you're looking at other countries, their data and their information to help, understand us. So will we hit herd immunity? Perhaps. I think it can happen. I mean, if it's naturally because a vaccine cannot help you with, a different variant that you're exposed to, because a vaccine isn't going to stop you from contracting. You breathe, if you're in the same airspace as you breathe it in, and what happens next is important. Does your GI tract deal with that or not? Does it go systemic? Does it are we able to neutralize that antigen? That we'll figure that out. We'll know once you get it. So yeah, good question.
If you were dictating public health policy,
that'd be fun.
Right now. We're now hanging out in the realm of new ideas.
Yeah.
If Dr. Taylor Bean was running a public health policy and given your your interest in a fulsome and unbiased evaluation of what's going on, but also your keen capacity to actually manage people and how this information is interpreted on the ground level. What would you be doing differently or more of if you had an opportunity to step into that leadership role?
Well, as a naturopathic doctor walking into public health, I would free to check your vitamin D status. That would be free because, well, in British Columbia, it costs $65 to check your 25-hydroxy. And you would be able to check your 125-hydroxy, which actually costs $95. That would be first off. Number two, education around how to make your immune system healthy. That would be mandated, in my opinion. There would be more education around that because I think that empowers people. And I think that's part of the solution. Because right now, the only thing that you're hearing is just get vaccinated. And so that still propels fear. Fear suppresses your immune system because cortisol is not good at high levels constantly, but no one knows that. So that what I would talk about.
I know that.
You know that.
Noted.
So these are the things that I would be talking about. I want my health minister. If I was the health minister, I would certainly be talking about health and how to maintain and embody it, all the solutions, all of them, and talk about how you treat yourself can affect efficacy. That's empowering. So that would be what I would be doing. Secondly, as maybe some of your listeners know, I am 100% against mandates. I would not be mandating. As a naturopathic doctor, someone in the realm of medicine, mandates take away my ability to give you full informed consent. And that to me is not okay. I cannot achieve informed consent when it's mandated. What am I informing you about when it's mandated? There's nothing to inform you. We don't have a discussion. I don't even need to know anything about you. I'm not going to know what's about your history, what medications you're on, by the way, can also be contraindicated when you vaccinate some medications. There's almost 100 of them. So there's all of these things that play into it that I need to know so I can inform you before you consent. So I am 100% against mandates. Always have been, always will. And that's just where I stand. And while some people may disagree with me, that is okay. Freedom of speech. But I want to be able to do my job to my best ability, and I can't with a mandate. Nobody can. So
nobody can. Yeah.
Right. And while now it's about, well, you can't go into a restaurant or gym or movie theater. Okay, that's now. That was step one. I don't know what the further steps are, if there's other steps that will be encroaching on your liberties, the ability to access food and so forth. Is it coming? I don't know. I didn't think it would come this far with mandates. So anyways, that's what I would do if I was in politics.
I love it. And I will echo that because I don't want to leave you out there on that piece that I agree with you on. I agree with you on that spectrum of mandates. You know, one of the things I have found most empowering in my career is that moment when patients take control and ownership of their own health, and they have this aha moment where they go, you mean if I've been eating really well and I feel amazing and I don't have that pain anymore. And that thing I was told was never going to go away has actually resolved. And when we mandate an intervention, and in addition to mandating that intervention, also falsely label that as a state of security and health and leave the conversation there, what we do is completely remove the possibility for people to just naturally lean into this idea of taking responsibility for their own health, of having the opportunity to have that aha moment. It continues to drive a narrative that health is something that happens to you. It's not something that you can create from within yourself. So, you know, for so many reasons, there's just something really powerful about the goal. My goal always in practice was, how can I get this person to a place where they are able to make decisions related to their own health that are informed by their own journey, where they feel like they have a control over where they are going to go, and always with a lens towards certainly not harming others. But the science is showing that mandating vaccines actually doesn't stop the spread of the disease. And so, as someone, we both do respect the literature and respect the science. This isn't just a stick it. You can't mandate me.
Right.
It is a position, I will speak for myself, that is truly informed by the real-time science that we are seeing emerging in front of us, and fear around what happens when we take the opportunity away from people to have full ownership over their health.
And with mandates, as they start to come out in different sectors, particularly the health care sector, we will lose. All of us will lose, because people are leaving their profession, be it at a hospital. Be it hospitals are full, but I tell you, they're also understaffed, which looks like they're full. When you don't have enough staff, yes, you can't continue to take care of people as you should. They're going to potentially encroaching onto private healthcare, which includes naturopathic doctors, chiros, dentists, you name it. And all of us will lose as a result, because either clinics will close or you don't get access to your care anymore. And as naturopathic doctors here in British Columbia, that can be your primary care giver. No one wins with that. And so
no one wins.
People will step away and you will be without care, be it it's the conventional side or it is the functional integrative side. It's gone. This is why I'm an absolute no to mandates, because it will affect you in more ways than one. And even though you've been vaccinated, it will affect you on different levels, which actually could be, maybe you need surgery, something not even to do with vaccination, whatever it is, cancer care, these sort of things. So I really implore you as a listener to reach out to your MLA, your MP, and let them know if you haven't. Yeah. Your voice really matters. It really does. Because we're all in this together. We are in more than one way. And this is a big one, obviously, because we're talking about healthcare and you could not have access to it as a result of a mandate. So
yeah, there's more than one route to optimal health. There's more than one route to peace of mind. There is more than one route out of this pandemic. And again, it's back to the sophistication of thought that we all have the opportunity to access. I've been a parent for the last 10 years and never being like, this is the only way it's ever going to get done. That has never worked. It's just, it's not in our human nature. And so, in recognizing that, I think there's real opportunity to start to bring other and additional solutions, to the table that are not divisive, that are not starting to segment society. There really is an opportunity for us to approach this particular challenge with a level of compassion and empathy for the fact that not everyone has the same physiological story as you. I feel like we could do this all day long. At the same time, I'm also recognizing that we have put some ideas onto the platter for people to start to chew. And while we both ended with our opinion on this notion of mandate, we still, I think, are hanging out in a space where we both recognize the role that vaccination has to play in this current pandemic and in a health protection and health public policy perspective, and that those are actually two separate issues. And that's what I want you to see on the table and on the platter here is not, oh, well, you gave me things to chew on, then you threw me your opinion. It's that they are actually two separate they're two separate issues. And when we recognize that, again, we can bring a different sophistication of thought to how we solve the solution. So in saying that, I want to switch gears slightly because I get to have these 3 rapid fire questions at the end that maybe have nothing to do with vaccination and the questions at hand. I never asked this question, but I'm going to because I'll just segue off of it. What's your favorite color?
Oh, purple, fuchsia.
Great. So now that we've completely changed direction on this, what's the biggest lesson you have learned personally in the last year?
Oh boy. I mean, I guess I've leveled up the language piece, but recognizing people's journeys and how to navigate that with them. So, I mean, language, God, is it powerful? And people not even realizing, the triggering aspect of their language is really coming up this past year. But obviously, taking care of yourself is another big one I really learned. Even as an ND, can always improve. So, I've taken things a little bit more seriously as a result. But I think language just hits me because it's something I always see, and be it's in family, which I've been correcting them on lightly on certain verbiage that people use, and not realizing it's not funny. It's not funny what you've just said, and you don't realize that. I mean, we learn. We've done that with, words within race, this is another area that we didn't realize can be triggering words. It can be traumatizing for people because you've never lived in this world of vaccination before, but now you all are. But this is not new, some of these words and how we treat, what people's decision making. And so trying to turn off the media and let's start learning it, and let's expand your intelligence around this topic because I think it's time. It's time. So, yeah.
Next question. What is the health habit you are most consistent with in your own life?
Oh, well, you know what? I just moved to a farm, a 100-acre farm, actually. And it's really and it's always been something, certainly is movement and get outside. But boy, taking those breaks to be with nature, wow, it really does ground you. It really does. And so that has been, although I have a farm to be on, but it's been this like right on, okay, I'm going to consistently be doing this, just outside walking within nature. Man, does it really just ground you. And I think we are always in this perpetual sympathetic mode that just does this serious disservice to your body, sleep and immune system particularly. But your overall, that piece. So finding that place of peace, be it it's you go for a walk, be it's a rock that you look at, be it it's, looking at a fireplace, burning wood, is just something that just be able to dial it down. And that's been sort of this new-ish, although I have before, but more so consistent for me is just that finding something that brings calmness to your day of whatever it is. And realizing, yes, that social media and on the computer and on the phone all the time it is not healthy. At all. Turn it off and do something different. Will go a long way for you. Yeah.
Last question for you. Entrepreneurship. Are we born this way or do we learn to become entrepreneurs?
My goodness. This was not my original career thought. I wanted to become a high school teacher because for the love of teaching, but I realized that was not going to be, I don't think it was going to be sustainable for me. And I have definitely learned how to become an entrepreneur and realizing that I love it. This profession is about entrepreneurship, and I have seen colleagues leave the profession because it's an entrepreneurship type of profession. But man, I love it. I love the dynamic with it. And so perhaps I was born and then it has really birthed that piece of me, and it's been growing exponential. But I think it can be learned, but you have to have the passion, tenacity, the will, the love that it all, entails with what entrepreneurship, is. And I've just right now opening a new clinic. Never owned a clinic before. And all the things that go with that are actually kind of exciting, different, new. And I don't, it's not something that I shy away from. So it's neat to be able to be part of something that you can give back. And because I'm all about community. So I look forward to being able to give back to the community here in BC and Salmon Arm. And being an entrepreneur allows you to do that. So yeah.
So beautifully said. Dr. Taylor Bean, up to so many amazing things. Definitely worth the follow on Instagram. Where can we send people to follow along and learn more about you?
So my website is dr for Dr. TaylorBean.com. And I have another website, which is www.vaccineoptimization.com. So there is a website where I have 8 webinars. Either you can buy them individually or all at once, but it's about 9+ hours of information. And all the citations are there of everything I talked about. And from infant immunity to the viruses and bacteria we vaccinate in childhood to what is aluminum and how do we optimize our immune system and vaccine optimization. So that's another website. And then Instagram is Dr. Taylor Bean. So my Instagram is basically 100% on vaccines is what it is now. It used to not be, but I just taken full head and this is what
we're in it. We are in it and people have questions.
Totally. There's no fun, pretty photos anymore. It's just straight up vaccination. That's what I'm using Instagram for. And it's been great. So lots of talk, lots of interesting, because I put those questions out there. You're in my sounding board. Teach me, tell me, what did you learn? Send me information. And that's what's happening is because I want to know more and there's only so many hours in a day. So tell me what you're learning. So it's been awesome. It's helped me see different viewpoints or understanding. And it's created a community, which is even more important, around breaking these boundaries and barriers that are old and archaic. Need to go.
On that note, thank you so much for being here. This was so much fun, and everything, all the links, all the pieces that we talked about can be found in our show notes at meganwalker.com/podcast. Thanks, Dr. Bean.
Awesome. Thank you.
I told you this was going to be a big one. If you're still hanging out with me, you got to the end. We covered a lot. I really wanted to put ideas on the table. We tried to do that where we were sharing our opinions. We shared our opinions, but I share my opinion in the spirit of informing an evolved state of your own ideas. It is not because I need to be right. In fact, all of us have the right to also be wrong. And it's from that intention, and it's with that spirit that I want to encourage everybody. The challenge, the call to action that I want to provide for everybody is I want you to just step back and think about, not necessarily even in the context of vaccines and the current state of the world. I just want you to step back and give reflection to where in your life you could, moving forward, because we can't change the past, we could, moving forward, be more aware and empathetic towards people with differing or diverging opinions from our own. Where can we take a deep breath and listen from a place of empathy and not jump to assumptions? Where might right now you need to apologize to someone for not giving them the breadth and freedom to come to their own conclusion? And so I'm not going to send you anywhere to get to leave a review. I'm not going to tell you to join anything in particular. I will share that if you are looking for more information about Taylor, that those notes are in our show notes. But I really would love to just create space in this moment for you to just reflect on what the next level of engagement can look like for you. What would be necessary on that platter for you to have a heightened degree of empathy as you listen to people who have a different opinion than your own? That, I feel like, would have a profound change and influence on the world around us. So on that note, I want to wish everyone an incredible week of impact. I will be back here again, like always, next Tuesday. I'm going to be joined by Kashif Khan. We're going to be talking about DNA, personalized medicine, and the emerging and growing science of how we can take our health into our own hands when we have a look under the hood at our own user manuals, our genetics, and our DNA. So until next week, have an amazing few days ahead, and we will chat again next Tuesday.